So, what do you think of when you hear the word church? You probably think of religion and religious meetings. As Christians, you likely think of the church as something Jesus started. Is it? Well, sort of. The concept of church existed before Jesus even said, "I will build my church." Let me explain. Before Jesus was born, the word ecclesia was already in use. Ecclesia referred to a gathering of people within a community. More specifically, it was a group of citizens called together to conduct public business. Now, like Jesus often did, he took an idea from the culture and gave it a more profound meaning. Everyone knew that they were supposed to love their neighbor, but Jesus made everyone a neighbor. He said that loving our enemies would be a unique and defining characteristic of his followers. They knew that marriage was significant, but Jesus took the concept of bride and applied it to his followers, making the covenant unbreakable. They knew that giving was important. A 10% tithe, plus additional offerings, sacrifices, and acts of charity. But Jesus obliterated their ideas about what generosity really meant and said that if they really knew where he was leading his followers, they would be willing to give up all they had, give it to the poor, and follow him. In Matthew 5 through 7, the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus takes some of their assumptions and flips them on their head. Do not murder. But Jesus said, do not even be angry with each other. Do not commit adultery. But Jesus said, lusting in your heart is adultery. Make promises. But Jesus said, just do what you say. Take an eye for an eye. But Jesus said, turn the other cheek. Love your neighbor. But Jesus said, love your enemy. And these are just some from chapter 5. This pattern of upending common cultural and religious norms continued after Jesus ascended. We can see this both in the teaching and example of the early church. For example, the Greek word martyreo referred to a witness who testified in court to something they had seen or experienced. However, after the first century, Jesus' witnesses, martyreos or martyrs, lived in such a way that the word took on a new meaning. Someone who was so convinced of the truth that they are willing to die for their convictions, to die rather than deny Jesus. Again, in Ephesians 5, Paul elevated and expanded the understanding of both the church and marriage. Paul compared the church to a marriage. He elevated the intimate connection of the gathering of believers beyond that of a husband and wife, and implied that marriage itself is a testimony to the world of what the relationship between Jesus and his followers should look like. So no, the concept of church, a social gathering and a community, did not originate with Jesus, but Jesus did do what he often does. He took how they saw and understood themselves, their culture, and the world, and proceeded to upend those assumptions. He then communicated, in teaching and living, the view of the Creator. Over the coming weeks, we will look closely at what happened 2,000 years ago. Before the apostles died, the temple of the Lord was destroyed. The church begins, with believers meeting mostly in small groups in homes. The Jewish and Roman authorities begin to fear the spread of the church and made plans to stop it. But it didn't work, because we're here in 2021. We are gathering as believers to encourage one another and learn from the Word of God. So what is this thing, the church? What did Jesus say about what the church is supposed to be? What is the purpose of the church? What is the mission of the church? What makes us a part of the church? And if we're a part of the church, how does that inform what we do every day? All too often, we just go with the flow, allowing tradition or norms to tell us what we're supposed to be. This is the way we've always done it. The church has been here for 2,000 years, Let's not fall into the trap of assuming that what we experience is what was intended. Let's get close to Jesus and hear him tell us what we are supposed to be. See his plan and then do it. Working this out is where we really need each other. Will you be an active participant in the church or merely an observer?